We're going to move on now to our yellow belt techniques, and what you're going to notice now is that we're going to be working more combinations within our techniques. At white belt, the emphasis was learning some basic self-defense principles and working our basics in isolation of each other, developing the individual moves. And as you progress through the ranks, we're going to start working on more and more combinations to show you how you can integrate your basics together in a practical and fluid manner. So we're going to go back to F combination, and we're going to add on to this technique, but we're not adding to the end or the beginning of the technique, we're adding actually within the technique. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. As he throws his punch, I'm going to use a double blocking method as insurance. Now when you first learn this, you might practice the technique where you block and then you kick and you break it down move by move. But once you develop proficiency with the movements through your punch, you want everything to blend together, because remember, the lesson of F is to beat action, meet action. I don't want you standing around waiting, trying to figure out what the attack is and how to defend against it. I want you to initiate with an attack of your own. Turn your defense into an offense. So he throws a punch, and this, like I said, is insurance. I can try to trap and draw him in to amplify the attack as well. Let's turn around. We'll do it from a different angle. So the difficult thing here is just learning how to perform this double factor blocking method correctly. Everything else is the same. He throws the punch, we catch him in the ribs with a kick, using some borrowed momentum there, and then we cover out. Let's turn and face them, and we'll do it in the air to wrap it up. So we're going to block, kick, and cover out. Okay, we're moving on to G combination now, and we're going to follow the same method. It's going to be the same basic combination, but we're going to add our double factor blocking method within that technique. In fact, I think if you look back at the white belt video, I did it subconsciously. I did it without thinking. So he throws his punch, I'm moving out of line of his attack, and I'm going to just use this double blocking method. I can just use this as a check or a trap, by the way. Same thing within F. And now I'm going to attack the knee and then cross and cover, the same as we did at white belt. So he throws the punch, we move out of the way, kick, and cross and cover, and we'll do that once facing you. But again, this is pretty straightforward. What we're teaching you now is a new blocking method. The foundation of what you already learned is exactly the same. So from our neutral position, we're pushing off our right leg, we move off to the side, kick, and cross and cover. Okay, we're going to move on now to C combination, and this is one of the core techniques of the system. This technique serves as a building block of the system. So you're going to want to pay attention to this technique, work on the movements, and try to reflect on what's going on, the principles that you're learning, and then as you progress through the ranks, try to establish connections that exist between this particular technique and techniques that you're learning further on down the road. And it's important that you establish those connections, and it's important you understand the role that this technique plays in its many different forms. So he's going to be stepping with a straight punch, and I'm going to step off line of attack. I'm using my left hand as a palm block, but here it's functioning as a check. He's throwing the punch. I'm not deflecting it out of the way. I'm not imposing control on him in the same sense that I would if it were a block. I'm evading the attack, and I'm checking to prevent counterattack, and it's important that you do so in the proper manner. I'm not going to check below his elbow, because then he can roll that elbow around and catch me with an alternate strike. So as I step out, I'm checking at or above the elbow. I'm going to deliver a thrust punch to the ribs, and I'm going to draw this arm down, and then back punch to the temple. Okay? So it's just a quick sequence of motion. Nothing fancy. He steps in, and I'm going to step out, and I'm going to punch so that as he's attacking, I want to borrow that momentum to amplify the effect of the punch. Then I'm going to draw my punch back, check his arm down, and back punch to the temple. Okay? So there's C. Let's do it facing you. We're going to step out and check and punch. Draw back, check down, back punch. So it's a thrust punch low, back punch high, and work on integrating the step and the punch and the check all at once. Integrate them together. Our next technique now is Speedbag. We're going to be learning how to defend against a roundhouse punch. So as he steps in, I'm going to do an inward block. And now there's an important principle at play here. In C combination, when on the outside of an attack, we learn to check at or above the elbow. Now that we're on the inside, we're actually going to deliver our block below the elbow, because if I block too high, this can wrap around and it can still catch me. Okay, so he steps in, we block, back fist, thrust punch, back fist, thrust punch, side blade kick to the knee, and then cross and cover away. Okay, again, so as he steps in, we block and back fist. So I'm going to actually kind of springboard off of this to initiate my back fist. I'm going to deliver it from point of origin. The block in this case becomes the chamber for my next strike. So where the block ends, our strike begins, then we deliver our thrust punch, back fist, thrust punch, side blade kick, and cross and cover. The next technique is thrusting wedge. We're going to use a wedge shape to deflect our opponent's attack, which is either a grab or they're reaching the push. And as we deflect the attack, we're striking to the eyes simultaneously. Now from here, so you can see a little bit better, we have our wedge shape here that's deflecting that grab, like I said. From here, I'm going to trap and pull this arm down as I come up with an elbow strike. And that elbow could potentially strike in low and catch him all the way up. And then I'm going to drop down with a heel palm claw and rip the face. Okay, we'll do it facing you guys. We step in, eye hooks with our wedge, upward elbow, and then heel palm claw raking the face. Now we're going to move back into our choke defenses. We're going to work on number 2 front choke, and I actually gave you the initial movement at white belt. If you recall, at white belt, we were dealing with a poke, and I said if he doesn't let go, I'm not going to do an outward block, I'm going to strike upwards. So now as he's grabbing, maybe he's grabbing and pulling me in, I can't step back, I'm going to step forward, and I'm going to strike up under the arms, and then come down on the nose. So I'm using this like a reinforced hammer or shuto strike. And there's actually another movement within this as well, because as I strike up under the arms, I could be striking up to his face and then come down with my shuto strike. So we're going to grip like this. We're going to make what's called an axe handle. We're going to step forward. We still have our wedge structure. It's just closed off now, and then we're going to strike down. So we make our axe handle, strike up and down. And there's number 2 front choke. That answers the what if question that we have in number 1 front choke. We're going to look at number 2 back choke now. So he's grabbing, and let's change sides. I think this will be better at this angle. He's grabbing, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to be turning towards him. So I'm going to briefly check this hand just so he doesn't let go and punch me in the face. So I'm going to check, and my arm is going to lift up, and I'm going to wrap his arms up. Now, you have a couple options for strikes. I can strike straight down into the groin, or even do a back punch just to finish up. Some students have 3 strikes. You can do it that way as well. Okay, what's important here is that I've trapped him, and now I'm just going to finish with a strike. Let's look at our lapel grabs now. Now at white belt, we learned that as he grabs, I can step back and grab the hair and pull and punch. So now we're going to add something within this. We're going to grab and we're going to pull him into a knee. So we're sandwiching as we punch. Other than that, the technique stays the same. We step back and grab, knee and punch, and then just land back on guard. We have one last technique I want to show you. At your beginner ranks, we're trying to introduce you to some basic self-defense, and a very common attack is a headlock. So if he gets me down in a headlock, and he could even be grabbing with both arms, it might just be he's starting to apply the grab and I catch him early. I'm going to grab and I'm going to pull this arm down to prevent him from choking me, and I'm going to reach up and I'm going to grab the nose one of 2 ways. I can grab around the side and pull back, and that's going to get him whipping backwards, and I'm going to duck out while I do it. Or I'm going to grab so that I get my middle finger right under his nose, and I'm going to anchor my elbow backwards as I duck out. Okay? So we're grabbing like this and pulling down. That should look reminiscent of your basic lapel grab, where you're grabbing and pulling the person from the hair. And there is more to this technique that you're going to get at a later belt. There's some initial strikes and some follow-up movements down below. Right now, I just want you to be aware of that basic grab. It's a good way to disengage a headlock, is grabbing under the nose or around the nose and pulling. It's very difficult for him to resist that particular grab. So we'll do it in the air together. As the person puts you in the headlock, you're going to grab and you want to pull this arm towards your body. That gives you leverage to prevent them from cutting off any blood or oxygen flow. And then you're going to reach up your hand between your head and your opponent's and then grab the nose, duck out from the arm as you pull back. And you could pull back and throw them to the ground and even do a hammer strike if you want. Again, a sequence of motion very reminiscent of that basic lapel grab that you've learned.